Part 127. Fantasy, I'm really not an unparalleled expert. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 1262. 4. The Emperor and the Girl. The wilderness remains. The former Thunder tribe has become the largest tribe in the northern wilderness with the support of the Blood Crow clan. Today is the day when Laming, the leader of the Thunder Department, is canonized. For 13 years, the Thunder tribe has been loyal to the Blood Crow clan, and was finally canonized as the king of the northern wilderness by the Blood Crow clan. This is the highest honor. The Jingle tribe was decorated with lanterns and colorful decorations, and people from all tribes had already arrived. A total of 10 young people came from the Blood Crow department, and the Thunder department donated hundreds of beauties to them. Then one of them put on a crown made of Blood Crow feathers. Below, many tribal leaders had envy in their eyes. There are also a few leaders with cold eyes. Thank you to my father's clan. From today on, Laming will work harder to fight for my father's clan and defend the northern wilderness for my father's clan. A generation of heroes, Laming, the leader of the Thunder tribe, knelt down in front of a young man flatteringly. The young man holds the crown and must put it on for Thunder. But, at this moment, a cry of surprise suddenly came from outside. Oops, there's a fire. There's a fire everywhere in the ministry. This sound was very harsh in the joyful atmosphere. Sir, please continue. However, Laming didn't care at all. Now, he only cares about the crown. The young man responsible for wearing the crown for him also nodded calmly. But, at this moment, several huge fire eggs were suddenly thrown into the hall, and the flames exploded. What happened? Enemy attack. The guests were all shocked. Even Laming stood up angrily and said, "Who dares to cause trouble in my Thunder department?" Before he finished speaking, a cold sword energy suddenly struck him. From nowhere, a swordsman came out to kill him. The long knife in his hand was boiling with killing intent, and there was a centipede-like scar on his neck. The remnants of Xuanhuan, Crazy Sword. Someone recognized this person's identity. Thunder, die. Crazy Knife roared angrily, and his knife was almost about to fall on Laming's neck. 13 years ago, Crazy Sword had no chance, but it had already broken through to the Tongmei realm and was close to the inner fire. At this moment, Lifespan slashed out with one strike, and a bloody sharp light flashed across the long sword. Laming was already a master in the inner fire realm, but when faced with this sword, he actually didn't block it, and his expression changed drastically. Be bold. At this moment, a master of the Blood Crow department was roaring, and the black Blood Crow wings flashed past. Many feathers on the wings were chopped and flew everywhere, but this knife was also blocked. Get him! Thunder roars. Immediately, the experts from the Thunder division swarmed forward. As for Xuanhuan, there was a hint of regret in his eyes at this moment. He had been preparing for the sword attack for many years. However, it still did not kill Laming. The sparks of revenge have already spread across the wilderness. Even if you die today, there will still be people who will come to kill you in the future. The mad sword roared angrily, and he swung his long sword, but the power of the sword could no longer be reproduced, and was directly taken down by several masters from the Thunder department. This rebel tribe was disrespectful to Lord Blood Crow back then. It just so happens that they should be punished today. Laming spoke coldly, "Cut off his head and I will use it as a drinking vessel." A master of the Thunder division slashed at the Crazy Sword. Crazy Blade closed his eyes. However, at this moment, a sound of metal collision suddenly sounded, and the knife that was slashing towards the Crazy Sword was blown away. The master who wielded the sword took a few steps back and vomited blood from his mouth. What happened? Everyone at the scene was shocked. At this time, a voice sounded coldly. "The lonely man of Xuanhuan, come and take the head." Xuanhuan is alone. As soon as these 5 words came out, everyone turned their heads in unison. Yun Hengbu, there are still some evildoers left. The Solitary One is a very familiar name. Is he the young strong man who killed an adult of the Blood Crow tribe back then? Isn't he already dead? Everyone is surprised. Under the gaze of everyone, a young man walked slowly. His figure was so lonely, being watched by experts from the Thunder tribe and many tribes, but he seemed to be walking from a world of his own. He seemed not to care about anyone, with a deep indifference and loneliness in his eyes. The Solitary One. When Kuang Dao saw the young man's appearance, tears suddenly filled his eyes. Haha, I didn't expect that a remnant like you would live to this day. Lei Ming looked gloomy and said. Since you're here, let's die together. He waved his hand. Suddenly, another master of the inner fire realm from the Thunder department suddenly moved and was already attacking him. He had already seen how extraordinary the lone man was, so he directly asked the master to take action to avoid anything going wrong. However, the master of internal fire alarm had just appeared in front of Guzhe, and before he had a chance to take action, Guzhe had already grabbed him by the throat. He started gently. Then he broke the neck of the inner fire master. Seeing this scene, everyone in the audience gasped. How can this be? How could a master of the inner fire realm be killed so easily? He is so strong. Could it be the heavenly spirit realm? Everyone's expression changed. Lei Ming was shocked. Although he was slightly stronger than the great master, he still had to fight hard if he wanted to kill him. This means that the cultivation level of this young man named Guzhe is far above his own? What kind of opportunities does he have? He subconsciously turned around, looked at the masters of the Blood Crow department, and said, several adults. Several masters of the Blood Crow department looked at the solitary man indifferently and said, you have some cultivation, but you are still unable to fight against our Blood Crow clan. Kneel down and sign the blood slave ceremony. I am willing to spare your life. But the lonely man said softly. I'm sorry, your Blood Crow tribe was just wiped out by me. He casually took out a golden feather, and there was blood on the golden feather. Your strongest ancestor only evolved a phoenix feather, which is very weak. Very weak. At this moment, the entire hall was completely silent. Everyone was stunned. On that day, Lei Ming was killed and the Jinglei department was destroyed. At the same time, one of the 3 ancient tribes that ruled the entire wilderness, the Blood Crow clan, was directly wiped out. Not a single Blood Crow escaped the massacre. This news directly swept the entire wilderness. In the wilderness, all the tribes set off a storm. The solitary Yun Hengbu is back, so powerful that he has even wiped out the Blood Crow clan. He is calling on all tribes who are willing to resist the ancient clan to come under his banner, and march towards the ancient clan. What, marching towards the ancient clan, is this crazy? Is he going to challenge the entire ancient clan? The wilderness was shaken, and all the races were trembling. Some were excited, and some were afraid. Now, outside Yun Hengbu in the past, the lonely man came with his hands behind his back and walked through every place he had lived in the past. Today, the place is extremely dilapidated, and there are still some exposed bones from time to time among the wasteland. No one picked it up. Grandpa, Master, I'm back. He whispered. He remembered that it was here that he started his spiritual practice. He suddenly took action and first evolved the skills of the bloodthirsty apes. His power was astonishing and the earth shook. Perform this technique to comfort his former master, Zhanshi. Then, he suddenly evolved a brand new method. As soon as this method was used, endless visions suddenly appeared around him. The sun was reincarnating, the divine moon was crossing the sky, and in his hand, there seemed to be countless shadows of ancient beasts, paving the way to form a vast ocean, with rolling thunder and turbulent waves. but he is like the master of all worlds, walking on all roads, and he is the only one who is supreme. The crazy blade who followed him, as well as the young men who were taken away by the crazy blade back then, were all moved to tears when they saw this scene. They couldn't help but kneel down. The way of the human race, the law of the human race. Our clan has a way, a law, and a way. Crazy Blade cried bitterly. A month has passed. Within a month, 4 tribes bravely came to the lonely man's command. The other tribes, however, stood still. After the Blood Crow clan, the Fire clan and the Giant Spirit clan who still exist in the wilderness are also keeping a wait-and-see attitude. In the end, no one wanted to go. Even though the solitary man has become famous, no one believes that he alone can defy the odds. The Xuanhuan clan and the Giant Spirit clan's army will attack the solitary one. A word spread. The solitary man did not resist. The army has arrived in the northern wasteland. There is still no resistance in Baihuang, and the armies of the 2 tribes are heading towards Yunhanbu's old land. You can't do it alone. Fortunately, we didn't go. This march of the 2 ancient tribes was closely watched by the world. The solitary man's lack of resistance was regarded by the world as a symbol of weakness. And at this moment, Yunhanbu's old place, the solitary man is giving lectures to the various human tribes that have arrived. The 4 major human tribes present, totaling more than 20,000 people, were all listening to his Dharma and his Tao. Everyone's face was filled with intoxication. That is the path of the human race. It is based on the laws and Tao of all races, but it is unique and not the same as any other race. Designed for the human body, it taps into the human body's magical powers, allowing every realm of the human race to have an extraordinary impact, no weaker than any ancient race. While he was teaching the Dharma, thousands of rays of light shone brightly, and among the rays of light, there were sometimes lights and shadows of eternal giant beasts running rampant, and sometimes there were displays of magical powers created by heaven and earth. Report. The enemy army is attacking. Someone shouted. The humans listening to the law on the spot were all a little frightened. The 2 ancient tribes and the human army of their servants number no less than 200,000. 200,000 troops have already completely surrounded Yunhanbu. However, the lonely man was still sitting cross-legged on the mountain. He was still preaching and said calmly, "This is the way of the human race. If you foreigners want to learn it, you might as well bow down to the human race and become their mounts. You can also listen to this way." He calmly swept past the 200,000 troops. Furious. You alone want to create a path for the human race? Are you looking for death? Kill. The strong men of the 2 ancient tribes roared angrily, and an army of 200,000 people came towards them like a tide. However, the lonely man suddenly waved his hand, and in an instant, thunder rolled from the sky, and a strange phenomenon suddenly appeared. There seemed to be endless energy in the earth, turning into thousands of troops and horses, rushing out. Ah! No! The thunder passed by, the air of good fortune swept across the battlefield, and the 200,000 troops were harvested like grass. Heads rolled down, corpses piled up in seas of blood, and even the strongest men of the 2 ancient tribes were wailing and helpless. Resistance. This was a massacre. The lone man on the mountain was just a wave of his hand, and an army of 200,000 was wiped out in ashes. The humans present were all shocked, and they were extremely excited. Listen with peace of mind. When you succeed in cultivation, you can kill all races. The lonely man spoke calmly. The setting sun fell on him, making him look like a god, and the blood all around him became the first hymn to the rise of the human race. When the news came out, the whole wilderness was shaken. Only then did the world understand that the lonely man never resisted. Not because I can't, but because I disdain. In his opinion, the invincible armies of the 2 ancient tribes sweeping across the wilderness were just a matter of raising a hand. Suddenly, the entire wilderness was boiling. Countless human tribes migrated towards Yunhengbu. The changes in the wilderness quickly attracted the attention of all races. The city of humanity was finally destroyed in the past, but now, someone actually created a way for the human race. It's intolerable that he dares to use the way of the human race as a stepping stone for the way he created the human race. It was that war beast that once glimpsed the martial arts of all races in the city of 10,000 races, and finally killed a genius of the chaos race. But how he did it is too shocking and stunning. The techniques used by various tribes to cultivate war beasts are just the most basic and low-level methods. The senior officials of all races were shocked and puzzled. But, no matter what, the threat from the human race has truly emerged. For countless years, the human race has been enslaved by all races. In order to curb the birth of the great road in the human race, they have killed the great sages of the human race more than once. The tragic disaster in the Humanity City 19 years ago was caused by the high-level officials of each race. That battle, Humanity City was blood-bathed, and every seed of hope was strangled. Today, there are still people who have created such great achievements. Kill this guy without leaving any behind. Some senior officials shouted loudly. A war of all races has begun. According to ancient records, this war lasted for 1300 years. In the past 1300 years, the fire of the human race has not been extinguished, but has become stronger with each war. The path created by the solitary man for the human race has spread throughout the world. His path uses the path of all races as a stepping stone to embark on the supreme path of the human race. The more intense the battle, the more powerful people were born among the human race. The magical powers and methods of all races were perfecting the path of the human race. In the first 1,000 years, a war that no one knew existed broke out in the city of 10,000 races. According to records, in that battle, the solitary man left alone, while the most powerful masters among all races were ready to fight. When the lone man escaped and returned, the city of all races was in ruins, with no living thing left. The general trend of the human race has been decided, and it took 300 years to clean up the remnants of each race. The Xuanhuan human race has since become the leader of all races. The lonely man also became the emperor in the same year. He is the first human emperor in history. However, after opening up a prosperous age for the human race, he rarely showed up. The lonely person after becoming an emperor is still lonely. He did not live deep in the imperial palace, but walked on the earth. Even, many times, no one recognizes his identity, he just looks like a lonely prodigal son. Wandering around the world, no one knows what he is looking for. Years later, in an ordinary small town, when a middle-aged man arrives, no one knows where he comes from or where he is going. He drank in front of a wine shop and sat alone in a corner, talking to no one. The store knows that such people are just passers-by and will not stay, so they are not too enthusiastic. But soon, the shop became lively. "Miss Yao is here. Miss Yao, please sit down quickly, everyone has prepared your meal." The waiter enthusiastically invited a girl in, followed by a group of ordinary people in ragged clothes. The girl was dressed in light yellow clothes and looked like a hibiscus. She sat down with a medicine basket on her back and a thick medical book in her hand. The table was full of good wine and food, all prepared for her alone. She smiled, her smile was like a flower, and she ate her meal calmly. Although the eyes of the poor people who followed her were full of longing, they were quiet and did not disturb her. Finally, she finished her meal and said, "Thank you everyone for the meal, well, we can start seeing a doctor." She glanced at the people following her. The poor people came forward one by one. "You have an eye disease. You need to soak water with yellow spirit grass to drink, and then boil sumac bark into a paste for external application." Whenever she talked about a medicine, she would open a medical book and point it out to the poor people. "Did you see it? This is Huangling Cao. It is found on the shady side of Baishan. You have to pay attention to distinguish it. There are small thorns on the leaves of Huangling Cao. You must not pick the wrong one. When boiling sumac bark, you need to use rainwater. She did not directly administer the medicine, but told her the treatment method and the search for medicinal materials one by one. All the patients present left happily. Soon, the hotel was empty. Miss Yao, you are really surprised. Why do you treat these poor people and only take money for a meal? The waiter cleared the table with a puzzled look on his face and said, if you were collecting money normally, with your medical skills, you would be as rich as anyone in the world. If you cherish your reputation, why would you want such a meal? The price of this meal is not as expensive as a casual visit to the doctor, so you just give it up. Doesn't it mean he has such a great reputation? But the girl smiled and said, as for the money, it's enough. As for the name, it's useless if it's too big. Seeing a doctor is important, but the cost cannot be waived, otherwise people will easily become lazy. Compared with physical illnesses, mental illness is more difficult to treat. As she said that, her eyes suddenly fell on the middle-aged man in the corner, who had a dull expression, and said, who is he? The waiter shook his head and said, just a passing customer. The girl thought for a moment, then walked over, looked at the middle-aged man, and said, I am a doctor. You are sick. Do you want to be treated? The middle-aged man slowly raised his head and said, thank you, I'm fine, no need. He was drinking, his eyes desolate and distant. He was clearly alive in the world, but the girl suddenly felt that he was as lonely as the stars in the sky. No, you are sick. She spoke insistently. The middle-aged man asked, what disease? Hollow disease. The girl spoke confidently and said, your heart is empty. If you continue like this, it won't be long before you die by suicide. The middle-aged man's eyes were like rocks flowing slowly, and he said, can you cure it? The girl nodded vigorously and said, as long as it's an illness, I can do it. Good night. Fantasy, I'm really not an unparalleled expert. Author, Gui Xin. Chapter 1263. 5. The lonely are not alone. How to treat hollow heart disease? The middle-aged man asked. The girl smiled and said, don't ask, I need to pay for treatment first. Do you have money? The middle-aged man shook his head. So, you have to work first to pay for it. From today on, you will be my assistant, helping me pick and refine medicines. When I collect enough for your consultation, I will treat you. The girl spoke seriously. The middle-aged man remained silent and followed the girl, acquiescing to this. From this day on, people in Gontang town discovered that the famous miracle doctor girl was accompanied by a lonely and strange follower. He follows the girl every day and rarely speaks. But the girl seemed to be deliberately bossing him around, assigning him a lot of work every day. Send this medicine to Mr. Wang from East Street. His daughter has a hidden disease. The middle-aged man took the medicine and headed towards East Street. When he came to the door, Mr. Wang insisted on dragging him to finish a meal, otherwise he would not accept the medicine. He wanted to pull away, but he was held tightly by the old man. He sat in the old man's house and picked up the bowl, but he was a little embarrassed. Uncle Lin's wife died. He was too sad, and he was a lonely old man with limited mobility. You have to come and cook for him for 3 days, talk to him, and mix medicine into the rice. Do you understand? Ah, you don't know how to cook? Then go to Miss Sue's porridge shop and learn for a day. Uncle Lin and his wife used to like to eat the porridge made by Miss Sue. The middle-aged man frowned, but he still bit the bullet and went to Miss Sue's porridge shop. As a result, he found that Miss Sue talked a lot. Her porridge was actually very mediocre, but she could talk a lot. It was obvious that she was talking about everyday things, but every word made people want to pick it up. Guests who came to eat would often talk to her for an hour or two after a bowl of porridge, complaining, grumbling, and expressing sadness, but Miss Su didn't care at all. She could complain and complain with those who complained. After it's over, the complainer often smiles and leaves. She can complain with the complainer. In the end, the complainer has nothing to complain about. When she gets up, she seems to be a different person. She can also complain with the complainer. Crying, the last person who cried wiped his tears and left peacefully. She is also teaching the orphan to make porridge. When making porridge, her mind is often not on the porridge, but on talking. Actually, people still need a home. It's so pitiful not to have a home. I used to have an eldest brother on Dongja who had a big business when he was young. But in his later years, all his family members left. He was depressed from then on, and he had no use for a lot of money. In those years, his favorite thing to do was to buy a lot of snacks, wait for the children on the street, and then give them to them, but within a few years, he also went there. If you don't have a home, you have no worries. People always need warmth. It would be great to have someone who works as a stutterer, scolds you a few words, and packs your clothes. Are you following Yao Lan? What do you think of her? Sample. The middle-aged man listened silently, unconsciously entranced. He didn't know what he was thinking. But when he was suddenly stared at by her, he remembered her question. He felt a little embarrassed and said, She has very good medical skills." Miss Su smiled and said, Okay, you've got the porridge in your hand, go and make some medicinal food for Uncle Lin." The middle-aged man also nodded. He found that Miss Su's porridge-making skills were average, not special. He left, and Miss Su looked at his back, shook her head and said, "It's so pitiful. People who don't even know why they live, are pitiful." Soon, the middle-aged man arrived at Uncle Lin's door. Uncle Lin's wife had died just a few days ago, and there was no one at home. When he came in, Uncle Lin was lying on a chair in the yard, like a piece of unconscious wood. The middle-aged man was making porridge for Uncle Lin, putting medicinal materials into the porridge and stewing it. The flames made the water vapor pop, but he felt eerily quiet. He subconsciously wanted to say something to the old man on the chair, but he didn't know where to start. His mind suddenly recalled Miss Su's chirping words, trivial but powerful words. He considered it for a moment, then spoke with difficulty, saying, "Old man, your stove is very beautiful." No respond. "Living alone is also clean, and the house is clean." No respond. "Actually, this is my first time making porridge." No respond. He felt like he was being tortured, a torture without response. The old man was obviously sitting there, but he felt like an untouchable star. This kind of torture continued until the medicinal porridge was finally ready. He hurriedly cut it off and let it warm before carrying it over. "Old man, let's eat some." The old man just lay there seemed to be 2 traces of tears in his eyes, looking at the sky, not knowing what was in the sky. "If you don't eat, your body won't be able to survive." The middle-aged man kept talking, and he suddenly felt a sense of helplessness. He felt like a confused deer, with no idea how to find the right way. "I heard that you two used to like to eat Miss Su's porridge." However, when he said this sentence, he suddenly found that the motionless old man suddenly moved. He turned around, looked at the middle-aged man, and said, "Yeah, we both like it. She always said that Xiao Su's mouth is so cute and cute." The middle-aged man was not sure for a moment whether the old man was talking to him. "I said that the porridge that Xiao Su cooked was always mushy." "What's so delicious?" "But she said that she just liked talking to Xiao Su in Beihua." "What was there to talk about in Beihua?" She was just talking about those things when she was young, and scolded me. The old man said as he spoke. The middle-aged man listened like this for a long time. When the old man was tired, he finally ate some porridge he cooked. When he went out to leave, the middle-aged man seemed to understand something, but he was still uncertain. In the next 3 days, he came to make porridge for Uncle Lin, but these times, he was no longer as tortured as the first time. While making porridge, he would chat with Uncle Lin, and he would always start like this. What did Aunt Wang like to eat in the past? Has Aunt Wang ever been a female worker before? Did Madame Wang like to quarrel with you before? Because the 3 words Aunt Wang are indeed the key to the old man. He only needs to mention it and listen, and the old man will talk endlessly, starting from when they met, how they got engaged, how they lived, all the way. Come over. It was okay at first, but as time went on, the middle-aged man would subconsciously smile as he listened, and he himself did not notice this change. The 3rd day passed quickly. On the 4th day, the middle-aged man came to the door as usual. This time, he was about to make porridge, but the old man stopped him. Young man, what is your name? The old man's lively and kind eyes looked at him. Solitary. The middle-aged man subconsciously wanted to speak, but then he shook his head and said, I don't have a name. The old man touched his head with pity and said, Poor child, it's good for you to follow Yao Lan, but you have to start a family and start a career. A man can't just rely on a woman. After I leave, this house will be left to you. This house faces the street. You can write a music score, but don't open a porridge shop, otherwise it will be very bad to take away a small business, remember. The middle-aged man was stunned for a moment, but Uncle Lin already said kindly, Go and make me some porridge. There is no need to take medicine today. The middle-aged man got up silently and went to make porridge. When he cooked the porridge and brought it over, he found that Uncle Lin had closed his eyes. There was a smile on his lips. He died laughing. The middle-aged man felt a sense of sadness and a different kind of emotion in his heart. He was silent for a long time, and then put the old man into the coffin that had been prepared long ago. He took care of Uncle Lin's funeral. The funeral was not done in a glamorous manner, but it was orderly and concise. People in the whole town said that Uncle Lin was blessed. In this way, 3 years passed in a flash. In the past 3 years, the middle-aged man has been following the girl. More than once, he followed a girl into the mountains to collect herbs. It rained heavily on the way. They took shelter under an ancient tree and got soaked to the skin. They were once blocked in a cave by wolves and did not dare to come out for 2 days and 2 nights. He once silently cooked for the girl when she was extremely busy, and then helped the girl treat some patients. He once took the girl's place to eat medical meals at a wine shop twice, and was regarded by the poor as a compassionate being just like the girl. He lives more and more fully. It seems that life has been filled. But this peaceful day did not last long. 3 years later, it seemed that there was some kind of change in the sky. People in a small town saw a meteor falling, and people in a certain big city were hit by a meteor, killing and injuring tens of millions. The middle-aged man followed the girl to seek treatment, but found that those people were corrupted by some kind of power, and there was no cure. There were 2 solar eclipses during the day. During each solar eclipse, a black fog poured into the sky and the earth. It was said that in a certain place, black devils had appeared and devoured living people. Legends and disasters seemed to be getting closer and closer to this small town. Finally, one night in the 4th year, a group of royal cavalry entered the town. They lingered on the edge of the town and did not come in directly, but they attracted the attention of the town residents. This team of cavalry stayed in the town for 3 months. One day in the 3rd month, 2 living dead stained by black mist attacked the town. The team of royal cavalry was almost wiped out, with only 3 people left in the end. The 3 people entered the town and knelt on the street for a long time, as if waiting for someone. That night, the middle-aged man is still cooking for the girl. The girl was sorting out her medical books. It was already late at night, and she added 2 more effective remedies. The middle-aged man brought the porridge, and she smiled. After finishing the porridge, she suddenly said, "Shall I take you to see the stars?" The middle-aged man said, "Okay." So the 2 of them left their residence late at night and climbed all the way to the highest Dongshan mountain. On the top of Dongshan mountain, the night wind blows, and in the quiet night sky, the stars are blinking, and the starlight is like a dream. He and she were lying on the grass on the top of the mountain. The grass was as soft as if it were filled with dreams. "The first time I saw you, it was like seeing stars in the sky. Unfortunately, you were so lonely. There was only one star." The girl spoke. Under the starlight, her eyes were full of smiles, and she said, "At that time, I thought, I must make your night sky full of stars. Like the stars tonight." The middle-aged man listened to her words with a smile on his lips. It was an ordinary, warm smile. He said softly, "Thank you." The girl stretched out her hand, held his hand, and said, "Are you still lonely now?" The middle-aged man shook his head and said, "No. East Street is too busy to be alone." The girl smiled and said, "Okay, then don't call me Lone again, and don't call yourself Lone again, you can just call me, called Duo, how about that? I like to be in pairs, it makes the world a better place." The middle-aged man gently held her hand and said, "Okay." The girl suddenly turned her head and lightly pressed her lips to his. "Go back. You have led the human race out of a path. Now the world is in great trouble, I will wait for you here." The girl suddenly stood up and looked at the stars in the sky alone. The lonely man looked at her back, remained silent for a long time, and suddenly said, "I have enough money for the consultation, and I will come back to get my medicine. I will come back and marry you." After saying that, he turned and left. "Hey, do you remember my name?" the girl asked loudly. "Yao Lan, I will never forget it." His voice has become distant. The girl smiled, with tears in her eyes. She raised her eyes to look at the starry sky, faced the wind, and said loudly, "I'm waiting for you to come back and marry me." Her voice disappeared in the wind. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, I'm really not an unparalleled expert. Author, Gui Xin. Chapter 1264. 6. Betrayal, Farewell and Incompetence. The lonely man finally returned after 14 years of leaving the imperial palace. His return finally made the panic-stricken tribes feel at ease. Emperor Qi, 3 years ago, angel observers discovered anomalies in the universe, and it seemed like there was a black mist coming. First came the gray mist, then the black mist. We tried our best to block the gray mist, but we couldn't contain the black mist. That kind of black mist can exterminate everything. Moreover, some people who have not died will turn into dark creatures and devour other living creatures, it is almost impossible to kill them. Above the imperial court, all the generals, ministers, etc. were speaking. Crazy Sword has white hair, and now his cultivation has reached a very terrifying level. He stepped out from the crowd and said, "There must be great changes deep in the universe." The lonely man nodded and said, "I will personally go to the depths of the universe." Kuang Dao said, "We are willing to accompany the great emperor in his own expedition." In the imperial court, countless masters have been born, including many emperor-level experts. During these years, the human race has been too bright and glorious. However, the world still only respects the lonely man as the emperor. In fact, With his current cultivation level, no one knows that he has reached that stage. The lonely man finally selected some people to follow him on the road. Crazy Blade, and his friends from the past when he was in Yunhangview. The Emperor's personal expedition gave the world hope. On the day of the expedition, the whole world was in farewell. In the imperial city, countless strong men were shouting, and the people covered the ground with flowers. The bridge of the avenue leads directly to the sky. Just when he was about to enter the void of the universe, the lonely man turned back and whispered something somewhere. In pairs, I'll be back to get my medicine. He took the crazy sword and others into the void of the universe. And at this moment, in a small town on the border, on top of Dongshan Mountain, a girl looked hard at the horizon. The brilliant light of the avenue made it difficult for her to see the person in the distance. But she smiled. I will wait for you to come back. If you don't come back, I'll go find you. I won't let you be alone again. She spoke firmly. From this day on, she no longer only studied medicine, she began to practice. Because she knew she needed a long life to wait. The lonely emperor led the imperial court to leave, and he left for 1,000 years. There has been no response for thousands of years. On the earth, everyone was already a little restless, but fortunately, that kind of grey mist and black mist never appeared again, making everyone think that the emperor and the others had indeed put an end to the chaos. Time flies. Deep in the starry sky of the universe. 30,000 years. Crazy Blade carried a long sword on his back and killed another grey mist creature. The grey mist creatures turned into scattered rules, and his battle seemed to be fought with the air. The lone man moves on. After 30,000 years, the realm of their group has soared, reaching an unprecedented height. Our cultivation seems to be beyond reach, and there is no way to advance, no one has ever reached this level. Crazy Blade opened his mouth and said, perhaps it can be called, the Supreme Realm. The solitary man pointed forward and said, the source of the black mist seems to be that inexplicable black area. They moved forward immediately. However, after entering that dark area, they found that everything here was very scary. Even the consciousness and perception of the Supreme Being were blinded, as if falling into eternal loneliness. They move forward hand in hand, but everyone can't help but beat a drum in their hearts. In this darkest realm, even if you set foot on it, it will be difficult to contend with it. The power from the nirvana makes people seem to forget their own existence. Fortunately, there were enough of them. In the first 1,000 years since they entered the dark realm, their expressions remained normal. In the first 1,000 years, everyone couldn't help but start talking. They were telling about the past, starting with Yunhangview, talking about the war between the human race and all races, and talking about the glory of the imperial court. But soon, this memory was over. Everyone became silent, so silent that no one knew how many years had passed. In a long time, if they are conquering the universe, it is better to say that they are being conquered by the universe. The 3,000 years. The 10,000th year. In the millionth year, one of the supreme beings could not bear the despair and suffocating darkness and silence and committed suicide. Don't commit suicide, we can win. The lonely man's heart was very firm and he said, hold each other's hands and feel each other's presence. He has understood that each other's existence is the root of their journey together. They walked like this for who knows how many years. Finally, they saw a dark tide. It was a thick black mist, but it seemed to contain the sound of crashing waves. The black mist filled the entire darkest dark territory, covering the sky and the earth. They were like ants facing a big wave. The black tide came and drenched them. Ah! On this day, almost all of them were transformed into dark creatures. Die! Kuangdao raised his butcher knife towards the solitary man, as if he was going crazy. The partners who grew up together with Yunhangbu in the past, the close friends who supported each other to get here, attacked the lonely person. This is a helpless betrayal. The lonely man was not alienated. His inner strength was too strong. He once lost himself and didn't know why he was living. But in that small border town, he had found his anchor. This was a bloody battle, and he personally killed the person he once trusted the most. He thought of the good times of Yun Hengbu. That year, he had just broken through to the bone-tempering realm and had not yet entered the Tongmei. That year, the Blood Crow tribe attacked, and Uncle Crazy Knife left with many of his companions. That year, Grandpa and Zhanshi died trying to protect him. The lonely weep in the darkest realm. He cried in front of the corpses of Crazy Knife and his companions, and then destroyed their corpses. He moved on. He was the only one left in the entire darkest realm. When he was alone, time became like a torture. Every year, every day. It's like a knife cutting into the soul. He was determined to move forward. He believed that there must be a big enemy waiting for him ahead. And he will die for the enemy. Time is like a song. Sad song. The world is passing faster and faster. His spirit was almost numb. 100,000 years? Tens of millions of years? 100 million years? 100 billion years? He has no concept of time. He began to recall the past crazily. However, eventually even his memories began to fade away. That dark tide will eventually come over there. Suddenly a terrible thought came to his mind. The dark tide caused Crazy Blade and others to mutate, but he did not stop the tide. The tide will cross the universe and then descend on the world behind you. In that world, can anyone survive? She. On this day, his heart almost collapsed. He didn't know if the person he cared about most was still alive. His anchor is shaking. He kept moving forward, becoming more and more numb. He didn't dare to think about her because he would always dream of her being swallowed by the tide of darkness. He burst into tears more than once. His figure is getting fainter and fainter. When he entered the 10th trillionth year of the Dark Realm, he saw the black tide, heard the sound of waves, and the empty sea appeared in front of him. But he lost his anchor. On this day, he began to transform into a Taoist being. Die. Lost. Numbness. He is like a dispersed light and shadow. However, just as he was about to lose his final years, he suddenly heard a familiar voice. His sleeping soul heard that familiar murmur. He was clearly alive in the world, but the girl suddenly felt that he was as lonely as the stars in the sky. No, you are sick. Hollow disease. Your heart is empty. If you continue like this, it won't be long before you die by suicide. As long as it's an illness, I can do it. Uncle Lin's wife died. He was too sad, and he was a lonely old man with limited mobility. You have to come and cook for him for 3 days, talk to him, and mix medicine into the rice. Do you understand? Ah, you don't know how to cook? Then go to Miss Sue's porridge shop and learn for a day. Uncle Lin and his wife used to like to eat the porridge made by Miss Sue. Shall I take you to see the stars? The first time I saw you, it was like seeing stars in the sky. Unfortunately, you were so lonely. There was only one star. At that time, I thought, I must make your night sky full of stars. Like the stars tonight. Are you still lonely now? Okay, then don't call me lone again, and don't call yourself lone again, you can just call me, called Duo, how about that? I like to be in pairs, it makes the world a better place. The familiar voice sounded again, and his almost exhausted soul suddenly became aware. He felt that the familiar lips that he had longed for countless times fell on his lips. Go back. You have led the human race out of a path. Now the world is in great trouble, I will wait for you here. Hey, do you remember my name? The voice became weaker and weaker, as if the girl had exhausted her last strength. I remember. He suddenly woke up from his transformation. He opened his eyes and shouted. Yao Lan, I will never forget it. He opened his eyes and saw her. She was wearing a bright red wedding dress, as beautiful as a flower. But now her life was passing by and it was coming to an end. Seeing him waking up, she suddenly smiled and said, You're awake. Isn't it so lonely? It must have been very lonely for many years. I said I won't let you be alone anymore. There were tears in her eyes, and she reached out and tried her best to touch his face. After you left, I waited for a long time, but you didn't come back. The black mist came, and everyone changed. I came to find you. I searched for you for a long time. I almost got lost, but I knew that you must be waiting for me in front. You are my anchor. I was so afraid that I would never see you again, because you would be afraid. You would be afraid that I would die, right? Your cat would disappear, so I ran so fast. Finally, I found you. Her voice was weak, her jade hand gently touched his face, and she said, As you said, you come back to get your medicine. Her smile completely disappeared, leaving only her last words. Marry me. She falls. Like a blooming rose falling. A drop of clear tears fell on his hand. Cold tears, hot tears. Boiling tears, burning tears. At this moment, the solitary man went crazy. He held her body, and his heart felt like it was shattered by thunder from the sky, bit by bit. Ah! He looked up to the sky and screamed wildly, tears falling from his eyes. He is like a sculpture. Holding the body of my beloved, I waited on the edge of the black sea of death for who knows how many years. The black sea of nirvana is empty, and the sound of waves echoes for countless years. The black mist rolled in more than once, but he was never lost again. There was only hatred left in his heart. Hatred. He held her body in his arms and walked step by step across the black sea of annihilation towards the end of the black sea of annihilation. He knew that he was the only one left in the world. After she left, he was the only living thing in the world. He held her in his arms and walked towards the embankment. His rage, his hatred. He looked at the embankment, his eyes were bleeding, but he still moved forward. He headed towards the embankment without hesitation. Like an ant, making a brave leap towards the ocean. Full text of the Silencer's extra chapter is over. Good night. Fantasy, I'm really not an unparalleled expert. Author, Gui Xin. Chapter 1265. Extra Ao Xuanhuan and the Great Dancer. The mortal world, which had been silent for countless years, has revived with the return of Li Fan. In the long years, it has experienced the great ebb of the sacred tide. At one time, the original laws of the world collapsed, the supreme beings were extinct, and the existences such as the Emperor of Heaven and the Great Emperor have become legends. Various mythical beasts, fairy medicines, etc. also fell into the dust. In the end, even the lives of living creatures could hardly be saved. Many existences were turned into stone, and the whole world seemed to fall into a deep sleep. But now, the world is awakening, the rivers are rolling, and the spiritual energy is surging. In the mortal world, those glorious and gorgeous Taoism have also reappeared. We woke up. In a splendid and ancient hall, several stone figures suddenly woke up, with shock written on their faces. These people were clearly Mu Jianing, Huo Ling Mu Wanqing, and Wu Xiaocan. At the end of the sacred ebb, they chose to gather together and wait until they finally turned into stone men and spent an unknown number of years. How could it be? Hasn't the tide of holiness receded? Why does everything about me seem to have recovered? Wu Xiaocan spoke in shock. In the long years of ebb, he once fell from the giant of the law to the dust. Now, everything has returned. Heaven and earth reappear. Could it be that Senior Li has returned? Huo Ling suddenly thought of something. Their faces were all stunned. Yes, it must be Senior Li. It must be him. Mu Jianning's voice was filled with trembling and excitement as she said, only Senior Li can do this. Only he can turn the tide and restore the glory of heaven and earth. Has he returned from the dike? Has he won? They couldn't help but thought of it and walked out of the hall. The Wild Sky Alliance has also awakened, and countless creatures are cheering and excited. Back, after countless years, everything about us is back. Great, heaven and earth finally no longer reject the sacred. Fall from the sacred to the ordinary, and see the sacred light again. Heaven and earth have eyes. Countless people were exclaiming. Saints are appearing everywhere in the world, people who have been sealed and fallen into the mortal world are rejoicing, and in the famous mountains and rivers, the majestic energy of the earth and the energy of heaven are erupting. There is a fish in the river that turns into a golden dragon and rises into the sky. There is a bird in the mountains and fields that turns into a divine bird, fluttering its wings and flying high. Everything that has passed away now seems to be returning. Heaven and earth are repeating themselves. Is it the one who has returned? Two extremely powerful beings arrived, Yang Chu and Changsun Changqing. They lived in seclusion in the mountains and forests before the tide of heaven and earth receded, and now they appear. Is it successful? Is it successful on the other side of the embankment? Woof. At the same time, in the ancestral land of the Ji family, the Wu family, and the Changsun family, which were once the three largest families in the world, three old men soared into the sky. They were so excited that they even barked. Ji Wuden, Changsun Bumi, and Wu Jianghe all woke up. Yun Chen and others also appeared, and the old people of the Wild Sky Alliance reunited one after another. Go to the small mountain village. If Senior Li really returns, he must be in the small mountain village. Mu Jianning spoke. Immediately, they headed towards the small mountain village. And at this moment, one of the mortal realms, divine continent. This land was formed from the former world of gods, Yangjian, and Huaguo Mountain is located here. The waterfall, which had been dry for countless years, suddenly started flowing again and crashed down. In the pond below the waterfall, there is an old stone statue. The stone statue seems to be trying its best to bury itself in the pool. Apparently, when the tide of heaven and earth ebbs, it tries its best to lie in the waterfall pool related to Li Fan. It is that the only thing the old man does. At this moment, the waterfall crashed down, and the water submerged the stone statue. In the water curtain cave behind the waterfall, there are two stone statues of a man and a woman. The two stone statues are leaning on each other, the woman is leaning on the man's arms, and the two of them have smiles on their lips. It is obvious that at the end of the fossil, they have no regrets. The impact of the waterfall is deafening. Boom! Suddenly, a ray of light rose into the sky from the pool below the waterfall. I'm alive again. Ha 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 ha. I got over it. An old man stood in the air. He laughed heartily, his eyes full of pride, and said, I knew he could bulldoze the dam, ha ha ha. Ao Bao Bao, come out quickly. It's time to bask in the sun. After he finished speaking, the water curtain cave suddenly separated, and a man and a woman walked out of it, and they were Ao Wushuan and Lu Kaling. Old Ao, I'm actually not dead. A flash of complexity flashed in Ao Wushuan's eyes. Is it, Senior Li? Lu Kaling, on the other hand, had a flash of excitement in his eyes. It must be him. Come on, let's go find him. Maybe he'll bring back the ingredients from behind the dam. Damn, I'm so hungry, hurry up, hurry up. The dancing master spoke. But Ao Wushuan subconsciously said, ah, are you going to that evil little mountain village? However, he glanced at Lu Kaling and said bravely. Okay, old Ao, I have been running away for so many years. I won't run away this time. I am coming to the small mountain village. Immediately, the three of them also headed in a certain direction. They all know the location of the small mountain village, and as soon as they think about it, they have landed on the Forbidden Continent in the mortal world. Forbidden Island is the transformation of the forbidden world of the past. Today, a series of powerful rays of light between heaven and earth turned into avenues and bridges, overwhelmingly heading towards Forbidden Continent. Their destination was the same, a mountain forest in Xuanhuan prefecture of Forbidden Continent. That mountain forest was once called the Fearful Beast Forest. Mu Qianing from the Wild Sky Alliance, come to pay homage to Senior Li. Huo Ling'er comes to see Senior Li. Yang Chu comes to meet Senior Li. The eldest grandson Chang Qing, the eldest grandson Bumi, Ji Wuden, and Wu Jianghe are here to pay their respects to Senior Li. Voices rang out one after another. These names are all supreme giants in the world. They are the founders of the glorious heritage and have the supreme status in the world. In the era when small mountain villages did not exist, in the perception of the world, they were the masters of this world, the gods of this world. However, now these super big shots are actually going to meet a senior. Oh my God, who is this person? He can actually make many super giants in this world come together to pay homage to him. This is outrageous. Each of these names is an existence that cannot be mentioned. Is there anyone with a higher status than them? Why? Don't talk nonsense. Do you know why the mortal world is called the mortal world? Without this person's permission, there would be no Wild Sky Alliance in this world. This is an ancient history. In the distant past, when darkness was still pressing on all living things, it is even said to involve the source of ancient darkness. The world was shaken, and countless people were screaming. This kind of scene is absolutely unprecedented. The strongest man in the world went there on the same day just to see him. Fantasy, I'm really not an unparalleled expert. Author, Gui Xian. Chapter 1266. The world is shocked. The most powerful giant in the world, on the same day, completely recovered from his silence, showing his unparalleled strength. But these unparalleled giants all went to the same place at the same time to meet a certain being. Mu Qianing, Huo Ling'er, Mu Wanqing, Wu Xiaocan, Yang Chu, Chang Sun Chang Qing, etc. have all gathered in the monster forest in Xuanhuan prefecture. After the divine resurrection, everything here is also recovering. There are many more powerful spiritual beasts in the mountains and forests. However, they made no mistake, and in an instant, they had arrived at the original location of the small mountain village. They saw a familiar small mountain village. The small mountain village has been restored. Mu Qianing spoke excitedly. The small mountain village in front of her was exactly the same as when she first entered it. At that time, she was just a saint from the Luo sect in the Xiantian realm of the underworld. In order to resist the invasion of the evil god, she had to come to the small mountain village. Everything remains the same. The place I have visited countless times has been restored. All this must be because of Senior Li. Huo Ling'er spoke with determination and expectation. Only Senior Li could change the entire world and resurrect the sacred world that had become mortal and silent. Let's go quickly to see his old man. Immediately, they headed towards the small mountain village. Huh? No. However, as they moved towards the small mountain village, they found that they could not reach the small mountain village. What's going on? The small mountain village is right in front of us, why can't we reach it? We are so close, but we are separated by something. How can this be? Huo Ling'er, Mu Qianing, and others were shocked. It should be noted that now the holy tide has revived, and their strength has been restored. When they reach this law, they can be called the strongest people in the world. Neither space nor the passage of time can stop the distance between them. What separates the small mountain village from us is not time and space, nor yin and yang, nor life and death. At this time, a majestic voice came, yellow smoke rose, and in the endless reincarnation, a middle-aged man came with his hands behind his back. He had long hair, casually hanging around his body, and there was a vague tai chi behind him. The shadow of Dao 2 seems to carry everything in the world. Senior Black and White. When Mu Jianing and others opened their mouths, the person who came was suddenly the former master of reincarnation, Black and White. I have been here for a long time, but I found that it is out of reach. Even if we use all the ways and evolve all the methods, there is an invisible dam between us and the small mountain village, and we cannot cross a step. Black and White spoke in a low voice. Hearing this, everyone was stunned. Could this be what Senior Li meant? Mu Wanqing opened her mouth and said. He came back as an old man, but he no longer wanted to care about the things in this world. He just wanted to be aloof from the world with Sister Yungzi and the others, so he deliberately set up a barrier. This is very possible. Black and White's strength is unfathomable, and he is definitely one of the most terrifying people in the world today. Even he can't touch it, except maybe Senior Li himself. No, not him. At this time, an old voice sounded, and the master jumper had arrived. Along with him were Xuanhuan and Lu Kailing. They are all here. I've met Senior Divine Witch. Huo Linger and others spoke. In the many years of the evolution of the mortal world, they had also seen the great god Tiao and knew the origin of the great god Tiao. Senior Xuanhuan, isn't the boundary between us and the small mountain village set by Senior Li? Wu Xiaoqan spoke doubtfully. The master danced and nodded. He looked at the small mountain village with a complicated look in his eyes and said. Black and White are right, this is not yin and yang, nor life and death. What exists between us and the small mountain village is the boundary between virtual and real. Virtual and real. As soon as these words came out, many powerful people at the scene fell into deep thought. Fantasy and reality? The small mountain village is real, but we are the non-existent virtuality. A look of surprise flashed across Yang Chu's face. Perhaps, the small mountain village has never existed, it is an illusion, and this world is the reality. Chang Sun Changqing is also reflecting. Life and death, yin and yang, black and white, are all on the same level after all, but virtuality and reality mean that there is a high possibility that one side between them and the small mountain village does not exist. This is the present world. We came from the distant past and were swept up by the tide of divine resurrection. However, as for the present world, we are all dead spirits and cannot appear in this long river of time. This place does not belong to us. When the great god jumped, he did not look at the small mountain village, but looked at the universe and stars in the sky. Xuanhuan has been running wildly towards the future with the entire present mortal world, avoiding the terrifying war in the past to avoid being affected. Now, their side of time and space has indeed touched the future. But the future has become the present world, and they belong to the past. This is a misplaced time and space. We have escaped the catastrophe, but we are left in front of the dam of the present world. We are all dead souls. The wizard continued to speak. At this moment, he suddenly seemed to have figured out something and said. I once didn't understand why people in this life had no souls, but now I know, because we are all just dead spirits. We are trapped in the quagmire of the past and cannot escape. Something is digging up the roots of the past, so Xiao Li comes from the future and overturns everything. But we have lost it after all. Compared with the life that Xiao Li originally lived in, we are the past, a shadow that should not exist, a history, and an old trace, but it is not real and can only exist in silence. Between. The master jumped and murmured. But now, everything behind the dam in the past has been bulldozed by Xiao Li, so the sacred tide, flowing straight from the source in the past to the present world, is now blocked by the dam of the present world. And the small mountain village, because of Xiao Li's existence, is the only real place. The passing past can no longer touch reality. This is the distance between reality and illusion, the boundary between the past and the present world. The divine witch, one of the oldest powerful men in the world, once even fought alongside Li Fan in the extremely distant past. He knows the most about the origin of the world. Yes, the entire mortal world and the entire past covered by the sacred tide cannot touch those stars in the universe. Xuanhuan also suddenly spoke. He also stared at the stars in the sky outside the mortal world, and the universe was silent. When they thought they were in this world and kept running away from the damn disaster in the past and rushing towards the future, when they finally arrived, it had become the past, and the future was the present world. The entire time, space, and world cannot cross this kind of boundary and distance. Are we all silent? Senior Li bulldozed the source of the catastrophe, and everything in the past has been bulldozed, but after all, we are the past, and can no longer touch the future. The sacred tide has been cut off by this world. They whispered one after another. At this moment, they all understood what Master Tiao said. This is the most difficult cause and effect in the world, and the most untouchable illusion. To the present universe, they are history and the silent past. It's hard to touch the present world, no matter how hard it is to touch reality. After all the wars and brilliance, it is hard to change the fate of the past. We will all become the past. The future is in front of us, but it is a chasm. If it is silent, if it turns into stone and sand, we will not feel the sadness, but why, we wake up. Some people are sentimental, others are whispering. They are all stuck in the past. Don't panic, Xiao Li, he's coming from the future, he should be looking for a way. But the one who danced the great god opened his mouth, his eyes burning, and said, there have been disasters in the past, the present world, and the future, so dams have been created. This is a big problem, and it must involve greater terror. There have been big disasters in the past, but what about the future? Xiao Li has come to our past from the future, and what about the future? Who will come to calm the trouble? He didn't know what he thought of. There's a big change. Suddenly, Black and White raised his eyes, scanning the vast sky and endless cause and effect. At this moment, all the powerful people in the world felt it. They raised their eyes and saw that in the endless river of time, there were countless passing lights and shadows fighting to cross. All those things that have passed away, in the past whose time coordinates are unknown, are awakened by the tide of divine resurrection. Countless pasts and histories, unimaginable strong men and dead souls are struggling towards the present world, overlapping one after another. Unthinkable. The creatures behind the dam. A time and space older than the immortal time and space, there is more than one level of time and space. Behind the dam, there are so many terrifying existences, one after another, layer upon layer, vast and endless, stacked up into a sacred old ruin. The ancient past that transcends the time and space of immortality, and everything that was once hidden behind the dam, have also been awakened. Do you want to enter the present world? Black and White and others were shocked. They are already the most powerful people in this world, but this scene is still beyond their imagination. What's behind the dike? No one knows that there was once a powerful generation of Jizha who guarded the dike for countless years and looked behind the dike. Apart from that, it was just Li Fan, after he stepped into the dam. When Xuanhuan and Tiao Dashan boarded the embankment, they could only get a glimpse of what was behind the embankment, but could not glimpse the terrifying truth behind it. Now, everything seems to be emerging before the eyes of the world, presented as the lost past, like a book of history being opened. Those were the origins of civilizations that were older than the time and space of immortality. The glorious and vast kingdoms and prosperous ages of life overlapped one after another, but they all died and turned into ruins. In the ruins and history of the past, unimaginable things seem to have been born. But now they have all disappeared, leaving only the stacked past being awakened. In those past, there are countless earth-shaking myths and legends. Every era has its splendor and past that is not inferior to the immortal way, holy way, Shinto and other time and space. Are these things behind the former dike? There are terrible things hidden in these things, which have dug up the roots of the past, but now that thing has been bulldozed, leaving only these old traces, which have been divinely resurrected. The spring tide wakes up and lies before the invisible dam of this world. Black and white spoke. Everything is understood. Behind the dam is the endless past, which contains vast civilization and glorious human world, the pure land of living beings and the paradise of gods and demons. But everything has turned into ruins and nothingness, the past has been destroyed by inexplicable horrific things, and catastrophe is spreading. And Li Fan went upstream from the forbidden time and space, crossed the dam, bulldozed the horrible things in the past, and restored the past to its original appearance. Now, the entire time and world has arrived in the present world. The dead past and the spirits of the past have all awakened, swept by the sacred tide, stacked together, eager to enter the present world. This scene is extremely shocking. In the universe that belongs to this world, there are endless pasts overlapping each other. Each past is eager to transcend the limitations of this world and enter the time and space of this world, but it is blocked. The past and history are piled up outside this world. And right now, suddenly, in the small mountain village ahead, there was the sound of gongs and drums. Across the uncrossable boundary, Huo Ling and others saw that the small mountain village was extremely lively for a while, and it actually seemed like a wedding was being held. The sound of gongs and drums even resounded throughout the entire mortal world and throughout the past years. The stacked past and years, the countless awakened glorious civilizations, suddenly felt something at this moment, and a pair of terrifying eyes seemed to be staring towards the small mountain village. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, I'm really not an unparalleled expert. Author, Gui Xin. Chapter 1267. Countless glorious pasts, one after another of prosperity, eras and eras of life, are all emerging from time and space at this moment, layer upon layer. In those past times and eras that passed away, there were too many figures of the most powerful people, and countless glorious inheritances, but they were all gone. It is older than the immortal path, holy path, and other eras. Behind the dike, is it the grave of civilization and life? The dancing master couldn't help but murmured. At this moment, everyone was shocked. In the vast universe, eternal time and space, there have been too many epochs of life in the upper reaches of time. Life appears again and again, and then is destroyed again and again, just like the mayflies in the waves of the sea. Life and death are not controlled by humans. The civilization, immortal way, holy way, etc. to which Jizhe belongs, which era of life is it in which it flourishes? No one knows. Those lost civilizations and past were originally buried behind the dam. With Li Fan's return, the sacred tide revived, and these lost pasts appeared in this life without the obstruction of the dam. Simply put, it's the past again. Because the sacred tide triggered the source of time and cause and effect, everything that had passed away appeared at the same time, resulting in the reappearance of the past. Those dead strong men and creatures were resurrected in a special state. At this moment, with the sound of gongs and drums being played in the small mountain village to celebrate happy events, countless eyes in the long history have gathered in the small mountain village. Is there any happy event in the small mountain village? A happy event, could it be? Huo Ling and others also looked at the small mountain village. At this moment, from the small mountain village, there was an inexplicable force that broke through the boundary between reality and arrived outside the village. In this world, two people were suddenly struck by this power. Yun 11's biological father, Yun Chen, and her mother, Lin Xuanhuan. When this power came, the long river of cause and effect boiled instantly, and the endless fragments of cause and effect turned into steps and appeared at their feet, forming a wide bridge of cause and effect, allowing them to lead directly to the small mountain village. "What's going on?" Mu Qianning said in surprise. "Senior Yunchen is favored by the cause and effect in the small mountain village. He has transcended the boundary between reality and reality. He can enter it." Huo Ling looked solemn. Yun Chen was stunned for a moment, thinking for a moment, and then, without hesitation, walked directly along the cause and effect bridge towards the small mountain village. At the same time, his wife Lin Xuanhuan also embarked on the road of cause and effect, and the couple entered the small mountain village hand in hand. They have such a big cause and effect. Is it because of Miss Yongzi? Someone guessed something. In the small mountain village, firecrackers are everywhere, gongs and drums are beating, and red and colorful colors are everywhere. It is an unprecedented joy. Aunt Wang in the village had prepared the ingredients for today one day in advance and managed dozens of tables of wine and food. The second uncle was leaning on a cane and arranging various things vigorously. He became today's leader. Stewardship. The bride is coming out soon. Wait for the bride, wait for the bride. Eat the wedding candy, eat the wedding candy. The children were jumping and jumping happily. Welcome. Suddenly, the second uncle shouted, and immediately Long Zixuan, Wu Dade, and others hurriedly walked out, just as Yun Chen, Lin Xuanhuan, and his wife walked in. There was a look of confusion on their faces. "You two are finally here." Long Zixuan bowed and said, "According to Master's order, I am waiting for you two here. Please take a seat." Lin Xuanhuan said with concern. "Master Long, is Yongzi okay?" Lin Xuanhuan has not seen Yongzi for many years since she left the world of the gods. After the vicissitudes of life, the years have changed, and she has experienced the decline of the avenue and the current divine resurrection. She no longer cares about anything, except that she cannot let go of her daughter. Don't worry, Miss Yongzi is very good. Today is the day when she and her master will get married. Long Zixuan returns. Hearing this, Lin Xuanhuan couldn't help but be startled. Her daughter Yongzi is married? Then, a flash of excitement suddenly appeared in her beautiful eyes, and hot tears could not help but flow out, and she murmured, "Okay, great, this girl Yongzi doesn't know how to tell her parents first." She wiped away tears of joy. Yun Chen said, "When did Senior Li come back? Is the holy tide because of his old man? Does his old man know that now the entire mortal world has become a thing of the past?" He had so many questions. Long Zixuan just smiled and said, "Senior Yunchen, don't worry, you will know these things later. Please follow me, take your seats." He stretched out his hand. Yun Chen and Lin Xuanhuan looked at each other. Although they still had doubts, they did not hesitate and immediately followed Long Zixuan in. Entering the small mountain village, there are lights and colorful lights everywhere, and a main road is even paved with red silk, which is extremely festive. Entering the small courtyard, the second uncle immediately arranged for Yun Chen and Lin Xuanhuan to sit down. Listening to the discussions and explanations of the people around them, Yun Chen and Lin Xuanhuan truly realized, this was really a wedding. A wedding belonging to Li Fan and their daughter, Yun 11. 11 Yetu, she. Yun Chen was a little unbelievable. Great, great, this silly girl finally has a home now. Lin Xuanhuan was very excited. The auspicious time has come, let's start the banquet. Please invite the bride and groom. The second uncle shouted happily. Suddenly, there was a piano sound outside. The villagers looked sideways and saw a pair of beautiful people holding hands on the red silk extending from the courtyard. It was Li Fan and Yongzi. Li Fan was dressed in a groom's wedding attire, showing his elegance and elegance. With a smile on his lips, he gently held Yun 11's hand. Yongzi, on the other hand, was wearing a long red dress, with her jet black hair tied into a bun. Her fair-skinned jade face looked even more beautiful and lovely against the backdrop of her wedding dress. Under the phoenix crown beaded curtain, her crystal long eyelashes were visible. Blinking slightly, he glanced sideways at Li Fan from time to time. Gong Ya, Ziling, Zhang Shui, and Su Beiqian jointly held Yungzi's long skirt, and the south wind played the harp to clear the way. The sound of the harp was like mountain water, light and graceful, making people happy, and all worries were thrown away. Xianning, on the other hand, holds a flower basket and scatters the white petals to create a beautiful atmosphere. When they came, all the villagers in the small courtyard were filled with joy and were waiting expectantly. The branches of the willow tree hang lightly, as if playing with the breeze. The willow leaves fall carelessly, along with the petals thrown by Xianning. The wandering old hen stops for a long time. In the pond, golden carps and a black fish cross the water from time to time. I feel very brave today. Yun Chen and Lin Suihan immediately stood up excitedly. Li Fan took Yun 11's hand and walked into the small courtyard. Bride and groom, please meet your honorable relatives. The second uncle spoke loudly. This wedding was solemn and simple, without too many red tapes and no worship of heaven and earth. The only part was the witness of everyone and Yungzi's parents. Witness, the ceremony is completed. Next to them, Du Guyuking and Lin Zhuzhan had already served tea and handed it to Li Fan and Yun 11. The two of them stepped forward to serve tea to Yun Chen and Lin Suihan. But, right now, outside the small mountain village, between heaven and earth, countless pasts are stacked together, and many extremely tyrannical eyes are staring in the direction of the small mountain village. The highest among them can even be compared with today's black and white, Ao Wushuan, etc. Suddenly, from the boundless universe, the long river of time and space actually reflected out. At this moment, the illusory long river of time and space erupted with the sound of huge waves, like an astonishing tsunami. This kind of movement involves the upstream and downstream of time, space, and time. At the feet of Huo Ling Mu Jianing, Chang Sun Changqing, and others, as well as those creatures older than the immortal era, there are phantoms of the long river of time emerging. However, the shadow of the long river of time under their feet has dried up. They are like helpless ghosts. They couldn't help but look downstream of the tsunami, and saw a huge dam at the end of the dry river under their feet. Behind the dam, the sound of the waves was shocking. The sound of the waves penetrated the clouds, and the bloody light reflected the downstream of the universe. This dam, separates us from the real world. I understand, the reason why we became the dead is because of this dam. As time goes by, many living beings wake up. Behind the dam, is this the life that Xiao Li originally lived in? The wizard suddenly spoke excitedly. Now, they all know that Li Fan's body came from the future and does not belong to their side of time and space. Now, the dikes in the past have been bulldozed by Li Fan, but the life they live in is separated from the life Li Fan originally lived in, but the long river of time has been separated by the dikes. Compared to that world, they are located upstream and in the past. That life is the present life. Just when everyone was shocked, behind the dam, there suddenly was a huge wave of blood, which actually climbed over the dam and formed a huge blood claw, pressing across the upper reaches of time and space, alarming the heavens for all eternity. The huge blood claw pressed towards the upper reaches of the years. In countless epochs, many powerful men took action, and various avenues exploded. The speed of the huge blood claw was slowed down, but it was not organized. A square of ancient time and space was almost crushed, and the huge bloody claws were invincible and grabbed directly towards the small mountain village. This is the enemy from the lower reaches of the years. Master Tiao was extremely shocked and said, years later, if I guessed correctly, this is a creature from the same time and space as Xiao Li. What level of creature should it be? Its power has been confirmed just by taking action. Climbing over the mysterious dam of time, coming upstream along the years, overwhelming the world, almost unstoppable. The village is overjoyed, and Dare is so bold. Black and White came out with his hands behind his back. He stood in the upper reaches of time and space. The light in the eyes of one black and the other white flickered. The supreme path of evolving chaos lay across the long river of time. The huge blood claw came to kill and was directly blocked. Black and White clashed with the huge bloody claws of the downstream of the years, running the avenue of reincarnation, but he found that the avenue of reincarnation could not touch the downstream of the years. Reincarnation seems to have been cut off by time. The huge bloody claws are at a stalemate with Black and White. However, behind the downstream dam, the sound of waves was still there, and suddenly a wave of blood filled the air, turning into a fist, destroying the cycle of cause and effect, and actually causing a crack in the Black and White Dao diagram. 2 against 1? Pretend we don't exist. Xuanhuan stood side by side with Black and White. He gritted his teeth and said, "I wish you a safe life as time goes by." Then, various empty shadows appeared behind him, which were the mysterious principles evolved from the Tao of Silence. His huge fist could destroy the heavens, but he turned them into nothingness. Immediately afterwards, various terrifying waves of blood were still coming from behind the embankment. Transformed into a divine spear, it destroyed the order of the heavens and made the world tremble. Transformed into a heavenly sword, it cut off the sacred tide and caused the world's cultivation to sway. Transformed into a Taoist pen, he wrote unimaginable rules, almost redefining the past. In the vast past, 2 more mysterious beings walked out after hesitating for a long time and fought side by side with Black and White and Xuanhuan. However, the bloody waves became more and more numerous. In the end, it turned into a surging river of blood. The river of blood is filled with blood, coming upstream along the dried up years, trying to defeat everything upstream of the years. Black and White, Xuanhuan and the 2 mysterious strong men, Huoling and others all took action instantly and tried their best. However, the power of this blood river is too mysterious. They can maintain their own invincibility, but they cannot suppress the entire blood river. The river of blood is filled with blood and they are about to rush to the small mountain village. At this moment, a piece of paper was found outside the small mountain village, and a willow leaf fell, blocking the vast river of blood. A leaf blocks the river. In a small mountain village. "Dad, Mom, please have tea." Yungzi brought tea and served it. "Teacher, please have some tea." Li Fan also spoke. Both Yun Chen and Lin Suihan's eyes were full of complexity. 11 the blessing is too deep. Yun Chen couldn't help but sigh. He deeply understood that in terms of strength, Li Fan had long been unimaginable and had no respect outside of him, and they only had this fateful meeting because they were involved in Yungzi's cause and effect. They didn't say anything more, took the tea and drank it gently. "Girl 11, from now on, you must not be willful or unruly anymore. You must learn to be diligent and frugal in running your home and live a good life, you know? Also, you have never been able to cook. You have to learn later." After Lin Suihan drank tea, she couldn't help but ask, her eyes filled with comfort. Her daughter is her biggest concern. No matter what mysterious past Yungzi has, no matter how glorious the history of Wandao ending, in their eyes, Yungzi is just Yungzi, that heartless and silly girl. "Mom, I know." Yun 11 spoke, and then muttered, "But I don't want to learn to cook, the big devil can do it." At this time, the second uncle couldn't wait to speak loudly, "Okay, the ceremony is completed, let's start the banquet." The venue was very lively. "Bride and groom, please come on." "Xiao Li, I wish you 2 children in 3 years and a family full of children and grandchildren." "Yungzi girl, let Xiao Li kill a few more chickens and fish to replenish your body." You are too slender and it will be difficult to give birth. Li Fan and Yun 11 went up to propose a toast to everyone, and laughter erupted from every table. All kinds of jokes made Li Fan blush. Li Fan was toasting from table to table. When he walked to the table under the willow tree, he glanced at the willow tree and found that the willow tree was trembling gently in the wind, and the branches seemed to be drawing sharp arcs. Willow is ready to deal a cruel blow to the downstream of the years. Do not hit. He suddenly whispered and said, some things are digging down the roots of the downstream and the future. If they destroy the roots of the years downstream, it will be difficult to find them. Then, while toasting, he waved his sleeves casually. No one around noticed his casual and smooth movements. And at this moment, outside the small mountain village, the vast and endless blood-colored wave has filled the entire upper reaches of the universe. In the upper reaches of the years, countless masters have appeared in the many civilizations that have passed away to fight against them. However, it is difficult to reverse this trend. Large tracts of the past collapsed, and the past was destroyed. But, right now, from the small mountain village, a breeze suddenly blew out. The breeze blew by, and the bloody wave that filled a square area and time and space seemed to be swept away by a hurricane, and was actually blown away and blown back behind the embankment. Between heaven and earth, in different time and space, countless powerful people are extremely shocked at this moment. They look towards the small mountain village, their eyes full of awe. The downstream of the years is aimed at the one who bulldozed the chaos. There is an opening from a mysterious being in unknown time and space. Did he take action? Why do I feel like he just waved his sleeves? Is he still waiting? There are also horrors and disasters in the lower reaches of the years, and he doesn't want to go directly. Many people are speculating. Xiao Li came down from the years, and the coordinates of that time are the future, and the future is also full of disasters and great terror. The great dance master murmured solemnly. We are the passing past. In the upper reaches of the years, after crossing the dam and entering the lower reaches of the years, many things will change. So, are there beings over there who are afraid of us and want to prevent our arrival? Nowadays, they are more and more inventive about everything. Li Fan traveled from the lower reaches of the years to the upper reaches of the years, cleared away the disasters in the upper reaches of the years, and quelled the chaos at the source of the upper reaches. But as time goes by, it's still not peaceful. That dike cuts off the long river of time and is the boundary between two sections of the long river of time. Tiao Dashan and others are upstream, and the entire mortal world is upstream. For the other side of the dam, this is history, the past, and the lost time and space. For Tiao Dashan and others, the other side of the dam is the present world and even the future. They indeed belong to the past. The sacred tide will surely descend on the time and space behind the dam. Black and White whispered, wait, Senior Li has bulldozed everything in the upper reaches of the years, and everything in the lower reaches of the years, he must also have a plan. In a small mountain village. Send it to the bridal chamber, send it to the bridal chamber. Finally, after 3 rounds of drinking, everyone started shouting. Li Fan and Yun 11 were surrounded by everyone and pushed into the room. All the extra chapters of fantasy, I'm really not an unparalleled expert, are all updated here. The new book The Mysterious Arrival is first released on the public account Geixen's Nest. Follow the WeChat public account Geixen's Nest to get new books. Li Fan is waiting for you, see you there or not.